TCA, what's going on, family? Appreciate you all joining us on this special live. We're really, really excited. We have a special guest today. His name is Frank Rolfe. He's doing some incredible things in the mobile home park investing space. But first and foremost, we want to make sure we welcome you all in. If you're new to this channel, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Love having you here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to give you a little background of Frank, he is the fifth largest mobile home park owner in the United States. He's been doing this for over 2 decades. He's got a ton of experience, ton of knowledge. I think he's got over 200 mobile home parks in his belt.
Actually over 250
Oh.
mobile home parks. He's actually got parks in 25 states right now. Fifth largest mobile home park investor in the country. So we get a ton of emails and questions all of the time. We figured, hey man, let's bring him on. Let's figure this thing out together. Let's get some questions answered. Let's get some people in the game, and let's have some fun with it. But in the meantime, we want to know, where are you investing at? This is the quickest way to start networking right now. And then what is your mobile home investing goal for this quarter? That's right, this quarter. How many deals do you plan to get done, or how many deals do you have in your pipeline? Go ahead and drop it below. Let's try to bring that up real quick. I want to know where you're at right now.
Absolutely. So while you guys are commenting below all of that information, we want to go ahead and welcome on Frank Rolfe. Hey,
guys,
Frank.
I've lost your audio. I don't know what's happened here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
We
yes.
can hear you.
Oh no. I can't. I'm not hearing you at all. I'm not sure what's going on. Let me.
Okay, we'll let you.
I haven't touched anything, and I'm not hearing you.
Hey, let's remove you and come back in.
Gosh.
Let's remove you and come back in.
All right, we're gonna let Frank handle that and figure that out. Hopefully, he can turn up the volume on his phone. He can't hear at all. Okay. If you guys can hear us, can you guys comment below and make sure that you guys can hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you guys good? Yeah, they heard us because the responses are coming in. So let's go ahead and bring Frank back in. Let's see if we got him. Hey, Frank, can you hear us?
Just a second. I'll be right in because I cannot hear you. I'll call right back in. Just a second.
Cool.
All right.
Hey, let's go ahead and keep this thing going. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get through some of these comments right now. I want to know, again, where you guys are investing at. Having some small technical difficulties, but we'll get this thing figured out. What's going on? Bula, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
What's up? Kelly, hey, Kelly. Nice
good
to
afternoon,
see you. Thanks
Kelly.
for joining us.
Justin, what's going on, family?
Thank you,
Justin's doing some amazing things in the mobile home brokering space. He's out there in Michigan. Looks like we got Frank back in right now. Let's try to bring him in. Finally made one. DS, what's going on? Frankie?
I apologize. I can hear you now.
Okay, no, it's all good.
Technological disaster, but we're good.
Hey, man, it's all good. If we can just remove that from the screen, Frank, and it's all good. We have tech issues all the time, but we're just going to keep this thing moving. It's cool because it allowed more people to come through. I just want to get right into it. Frank, you've done some amazing things in the mobile home park investing space. Again, fifth largest mobile home park owner in the country. You've got over 250 mobile home parks, 25 states. I just want to know, first and foremost, how did you get started? Because I think you stumbled into this. I remember reading an article saying you were in the billboard industry at first.
That's correct. I got into this industry completely accidentally. I had a billboard company. I started out of college, and I built 2 billboards on a mobile home park in Dallas called Glenhaven on Interstate 35. And when I sold the billboard company, I was going to start a new career. I called around a lot of my landowners that I had billboards on to ask them how their business worked, to see if there's any opportunity in it. So I called Dairy Queen franchisees and everybody. When I called the mobile home park guy, he said to me, I'll tell you what, I'll sell you the park right now on the phone for $400,000 with only $10,000 down, and I'll carry the paper on it. And I said, well, what's wrong with it? Because nobody would, everyone else I called, they would never do that. And he said, well, it's losing $2,000 a month. So that's the deal. I'll sell it to you. All you got at risk is 10 grand. See if you can fix it. I can't fix it. So I thought, well, okay, that sounds kind of crazy, but the risk wasn't that much. I knew nothing about mobile home parks at all. So I went ahead and bought the thing and started the adventure of trying to fix the $2,000. And then when I got that fixed, then the question is, how high can I take the cash flow on it? And meanwhile, once I fixed it more, I realized, hey, I think I'll buy another one. And that was kind of the start of the movie, but it was completely accidental. It wasn't any great master plan. If the Dairy Queen guy said, I'll sell you my Dairy Queen for 400,000 with 10,000 down, losing $2,000 a month, I'd be in the Dairy Queen business. So it was it was that random.
It was luck. It was luck that you ran into that guy and that
Good
you
luck.
knew him, and he gave you a really awesome deal to get started with. And so I'm curious. I mean, I know you've been in the game for over two decades. And so how has the industry changed, the mobile home park industry changed, and why is right now the best time to actually invest in mobile home parks?
Okay, well, the problem was back in the 90s when I got in it and when my partner got in it, a lot of people got in it, there was no lending back in the 90s. So if you wanted to buy a mobile home park in the 90s, you better not need a bank loan because banks wouldn't even talk to you. So the big difference between the 90s and now is today banks like mobile home parks. You rarely hear of a deal that doesn't get financed. But back in the 90s, people used to try and buy parks all the time and they could never get a loan on it because banks just did not feel comfortable with trailer parks as the collateral. So that's been the biggest change. The only other big change you've had is the nation's need for affordable housing has grown exponentially since the 90s, right? In the 90s, everyone thought they had the attainable goal of owning a stick-built house. Today, with stick-built houses so insanely expensive, that's not even really attainable. So you can either be in an apartment or you can have your own home with your own yard and park by your front door and have a neighborhood feel, and that's the mobile home park. So, the industry has changed in its stature, and then also just the public's perception of it has changed. It's a much better industry today than it was in the 90s.
Yeah, I heard you once say, you started in 1996 and you said, hey, if I would have had it my way, knowing what I know now, I would have started 4 years later in the year 2000. What was that? What did you learn at that time?
Well, the first thing I learned was the kind of parks I was buying in the early days aren't the kind of parks you necessarily want to buy. I was buying things with really bad utility problems. Glenhaven, for example, had master metered gas and master metered electric, both of which went out on me, and both of which gave me complete heart failure. And I didn't really understand at that point. I had this opinion that mobile home park residents were somehow lesser beings that weren't really in tune with what the average person wants, and that's totally untrue. So people live in mobile home parks. They want nice neighborhoods. They want nice schools, shopping, same thing as everybody else wants. So the way I look at mobile home parks today is they're more like high density subdivisions. They're not some kind of different animal. It's not just some other group out there who live differently. They all have the same goals. They want their kids to go to pharmacy school. It's just the same deal. But all of us, because of the media, get this really bad attitude on mobile home parks that somehow people who live in them are deficient or strange. And that's not what I found to be the case whatsoever. I found people in mobile home parks, to be honest with you, by and large, are generally nicer than people who live in McMansion neighborhoods. So, but they all have the same goals. It's not in any way what my original perception was.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that we talk about with our students and the people on this channel is we have to get rid of the stigma about being in mobile home parks and the people living in mobile home parks, because they're just like everyone else. They have the dreams that they have, their families, they want to have a clean place to live. And this is just an affordable option for them. And so I'm curious, I know I've heard you say in previous interviews as well that mobile home parks are an endangered species.
Yep.
And so why would you never recommend building a mobile home park? And why do you think they're an endangered species?
Okay, well, they're endangered because cities haven't allowed any new ones to be built in about half a century. So the supply is pretty much fixed at about 44,000, but there's more torn down each year than are built. And the problem in building them new is if you can find a piece of land in a city that's zoned a mobile home park, that's one thing. But normally what people do is they go way out of the city, way out in the county to build. And when you get way out there, number one, you got problems getting customers. Number two, you have no access to public utilities. So you have this very, very expensive, risky private utilities. And the big problem is lending, because banks don't like to do construction loans on mobile home parks. So there are a few built. I know people who have built a few, but it's really hard. It's much harder to build one than it is to buy an existing one.
Got you. What would you say somebody just starting out, what are your tips for success? I know you mentioned as well 5 factors that you should be looking into when you're looking to purchase your first mobile home park. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. The 5, let me start with that, then I'll go backwards to the first part of the question. The 5 key drivers when you evaluate a park to buy they spell ideal: infrastructure, density, economics, age of home, and location. And that's uniformly true against every park in the United States. But when you're first starting out, the key things you got to do is, number one, you got to identify a territory. And for most people, that territory is about a 5-hour drive from your house. Because when you buy things that are 5 hours from your house, then you feel very much in control, right? So if there's a problem, you can just on a Saturday jump in your car, go out, see what's going on, and drive home, be home by dinner. And when you have to fly somewhere, your feeling of control goes down about 90%, because then you have to get a flight and a rental car. It's a big pain in the rear, and it's very expensive. So for most people, including Dave and I, when we started out, we wanted parks we could drive to from our house. So once you identify what your territory is, then the next thing is what kind of deal you're trying to buy. And typically that's how much capital you have times 5 to 10. So if you said, well, I got 50 grand, well, then you're looking for a park between $250,000 and $500,000. And then what you do is, once you know what you're looking for and where you're looking for it, you want to pour as much volume in as you can. So you would start looking at everything on Mobile Home Park Store and on LoopNet and the brokers and cold calling and direct mail and everything, because volume is your friend. So once you have a sorter, just like if you're mining for gold or something, you pour as much dirt through the sorter as you humanly can. And that's how you do it. You just got to kind of just jump in there and do it. You can't just decide, get in a pool. You can't just, go in a quarter inch at a time. It'll take you a year to get in the pool. You kind of just got to jump in.
Understandable. Now, a lot of the investors we've been working with, some of the more seasoned mobile home investors that have hit that 6-figure range, now they're looking for something new, but this is so new for them, and they're still kind of pondering, like, man, I don't have in my account right now $250,000, $500,000.
You don't need that. You don't need that kind of money. I mean, my first park, Glenhaven, was 10 grand. My second park was 5 grand. I'm talking down payment, right? You're going to, when people get weirded out on the industry because they see these listings on Mobile Home Park Store and LoopNet that are like millions and millions of dollars. But that's not the reality. It's like if you're going to buy a used car, okay? I mean, if you go to a dealership and say, how much is the used car? Then you just like call people in the paper. It's a whole different world, right? It's like the used car at the dealership was $38,000, but look, I can find it in the newspaper for 17. So you just got to be a better shopper. The stuff that you can immediately find, it's always overpriced by at least double. Yeah. But you can't let that freak you out. You don't have to have big money. If you find a park that's distressed with a mom and pop, you can do a deal like Glenhaven, because they know the problems. They know the average person isn't going to buy it, and they don't want to do it, and they know it's hard to get a loan, and they will carry the paper. But you got to seek that stuff out. You can't expect people to bring that to you. You have to go through and find it.
I love that. It's about hunting. It's about not looking at the big number. Hey, I've got $5,000, $10,000. Going to go out and go get a quick mobile home deal done, get that down payment done, and keep moving forward in this industry. So
and I know that you mentioned your first deal was from a mom and pop owner, and I know as just being in the industry, there's a lot more corporations, institutionally owned companies actually taking over these mobile home parks in mass numbers. But do you think those deals are still out there as far as reaching out to those mom and pop?
Let's just break it down scientifically, okay? So if you take the top 100 owners, of which we are ranked somewhere between number 5 and number 10, that number is always changing. But if you drop down to number 100, it's a guy named Abraham Anderson. He owns, I think, 7 mobile home parks roughly. So if you take all the mobile home parks that number 1, who Sam Zell owns, he owns about 250, all the way down to Abraham Anderson at 7, and you add them all together, it doesn't even equal 4,000. And there's 44,000 parks. So institutional ownership, we're still at less than 10% institutional ownership.
Okay, so there's tons of opportunity out there.
Yes, there's 40,000 parks that are still owned by moms and pops all across the U.S. That's correct.
Yeah, I was at a meeting once, and I heard a guy, tell a mobile home park investor that came to speak. His question was like, "Hey, what are you doing raising rents? You're going in here, you're fixing up the park, you're raising the rents, but at some point you're gonna make it not feasible for those individuals that are living in the park." What would you say to him?
Yeah, see, that is a myth that's not based on actual economic fact. I mean, the average lot rent in the U.S. right now is running about $280 a month, right? The average apartment is running like $1,600 a month. So how is it that people can't afford, more than $280 a month in a park, yet they can afford $1,600 in an apartment? So you look at some markets where you've had more institutional, because see, the institutions, they're not as afraid about raising rents as individuals are. So if you look at Denver, Colorado, as an example, the average lot rent in Denver right now is almost $900 a month. They used to only be $280 a month about 10 years ago. So you'd say, well, how then they all must be empty. No, they're completely full with waiting lists, because still 800 or 900 a month in Denver is infinitely better than $2,000 a month for an apartment. Right. But see, a lot of the moms and pops, they have no self-confidence. And I hear this all the time when we buy parks, even from my original guy, Ron, that I bought Glenhaven from. Ron's rent was only $175 a month in Dallas, Texas. And I was like, Ron, have you ever raised it? Oh, I haven't raised it in like 10 years because, they can't afford it. Well, what are you talking about? I mean, minimum wage in Missouri where I am is $11 an hour, right? So that means you can't work in Missouri full time and not make at least $22,000 a year. And you pay almost no income tax off of that. So if you're making, let's say, $1,700 a month gross, and the U.S. government says a third of that can go towards housing and your economics are still healthy, then that means you can put about $500 or $600 a month towards housing, which means that to us, that's more what affordable housing means, is $500 to $600. But when a guy's got rents at $280, that's just stupid. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. There's a barbecue restaurant about a half an hour down the highway from where I am in rural Missouri that used to have a barbecue sandwich. There's a giant barbecue sandwich for 99 cents. And everyone knew that was stupid. And he was doing that because he wanted to get you to buy the drink and the fries. But it wasn't like the McDonald's value meal hamburger. This was like a giant barbecue sandwich. Well, that guy died, and his heirs who took over the barbecue restaurant, they took that thing up from $1 to $2. And everyone had a fit. People will never afford it. It hasn't impacted their sales whatsoever, right? They could take that sandwich up to $5. They still sell all the sandwiches they can create. But there's this myth, there's this legend that like our rents aren't affordable. We're so cheap, it's pathetic. So yeah, you could double every rent in the U.S. tomorrow, and we'd still be the cheapest thing by far.
My man, if you're out there and you're listening, hey, we're debunking your myths left and right now. Frank, you keep mentioning the Glenhaven Park. I know you bought it $400,000. $10,000 down. I want to know, do you still own that park, or did you flip it? And what?
No, I flipped that park. It's crazy. I bought that park for $400,000, and I put probably another 100 or so into improvements, and I sold it to the next guy for $1.5 million, thinking that was a great sale. And that park today would be worth probably about $3 or $4 million, right? That's how much rents continued to go up. When I bought it at a $175 rent, I got it up to like $300 and sold it, thinking that was the limit. The rents there are now at like $600. See, wow. So that's, it's no different than the guy who bought Apple stock, for 50 cents, and at $5, he says, oh, that's as far as Apple will go. And, I was no different. I didn't really understand what I was doing in the early days. I was just a goofball. I mean, I had my own myths and legends I invented myself.
Yeah. And you had to figure it out. You had to get in the game and figure it out. And I'm sure you would never make some of those mistakes that you make now. So I'm just curious, we're going to bring in some questions, guys. If you guys have questions, be sure to drop them in the comments.
Let's give them a chance to ask a few questions. Go ahead and drop those in. I know you had another one.
But my question for you is, for someone that's, looking to get started with owning their first mobile home park, what are some of the skill sets you would say that they need? What are some of the things that they should really develop as they're looking to get into this business?
Okay, the first thing you got to be a people person. You're never going to make it if you're not a people person, because you're buying from moms and pops, and brokers and relationships are key. And we call that bonding, and you've got to bond with people. And how do you bond with people? Normally by listening more than talking, but you have to actually be interested, because they can sense if you're just using them. So if you want to do good, like people. If you don't like people, I'm not sure mobile home parks is going to work for you, because it's a people business. It's a people business in finding them, managing them. It's all about people. And the way we look at it is, when we go to mom and pop to buy, we look at ourselves kind of as in a consulting capacity, right? Hey, you got this park. We'd like to buy it. Here's what we think it's worth. What do you think it's worth? And we call this win-win deal making. So we think, like, let's say the mom and pop has hired us, right? Saying, I want to get the most I can get realistically for the park. Well, I'm willing to pay them the most I can realistically get, because that's what win-win deal making is about. So we don't lie to them. We just say, hey, we want to buy the park. Tell me the story. How'd you come to own it? And, a lot of people in America, they do what's called win-lose deal making. And a win-lose deal making is you try and take advantage of people and lowball them and push them around and stuff like that. That doesn't really get you anywhere. So, most mobile home park owners are basically older, rich people And you can't push them around. You can't suddenly pop up the day before closing and say, I'm only going to give you half of that amount, take it or leave it. Or they're going to say, I'll leave it because I don't even need your money, buddy. I was just trying to help you out to begin with. You know, I have a million stories of park sellers who just bent over backwards because they're people. They were trying to help people. I mean, I once bought a park from a guy out in East Texas, and I got a tip from the city that the guy was doing all my repairs on my like water and sewer lines. And I called the guy up and said, "Are you fixing all my water and sewer?" He's like, yeah, I am. I'm like, well, you don't have to do that. I have a budget for repair. No. I sold it to you. And I don't want to like rip you off. And so, yeah, I just keep fixing it. If I had a tenant leave a house, the guy would go and he'd remodel the house for free. Right? Why? Because he was an old guy and he wanted there to be a bigger meaning in life than just money. Right? He was looking for a bigger purpose. And that's how a lot of these moms and pops are. So if the number one trait is you got to be a people person, you got to like care about people, be interested in people, listen to people. Just, you got to believe in win-win deal making. That's the key. And the other item is just volume. You know, a lot of people, they don't do enough volume. You got to do a ton of volume. I've read a book recently by a guy named Joe Girardi. He holds the world's record for the most automobiles ever sold in America in 1 year. I think this guy sold by himself 4,000 cars or something. Wow. This guy sold more cars personally in the 70s than the average dealership sold in a year. And he would do that production like in a matter of months. And if you read his book, it's a great book. It's written like 1972. It's all about volume. He was the guy that invented like direct mail to people for cars and all that crud. He'd invented like newspaper or like TV ads and stuff because he had a theory that basically the more people he talked to, the more cars he would sell. And he didn't even know which people it would be. It might be the guy that comes in 5 minutes before closing, and it might be somebody who comes in and comes 3 or 4 times to look at the car. But he was all about the volume, and that's how parks are. It's all about the volume. The more parks you look at, the better your odds.
People pleasing. I'm sorry, not people pleasing. We're not people pleasing. It's all about connecting with people.
People pleasing is our part of it. Yeah.
Bonding with people, and we're focusing on volume now. Some of you guys took notes. He just mentioned connecting with mobile home park brokers. So, Frank, there's going to be a bunch of people that go and do that. They're going to connect with these brokers. But when it comes to due diligence, can you give them a couple quick tips what to look for?
Sure. Yeah. In due diligence, the key items on the park, you got to start with the basics. So you start the ground level, and it's all about utilities. So how is the park built? You know, what you want is you want city water, you want city sewer, and you want paved roads, and you want directly billed power and directly billed gas, just like in your neighborhood, right? But a lot of these moms and pops back in the 50s and the 60s, to cut corners and stuff, they would build private water, private sewer, master metered gas, master metered electric. Those things are nightmares today, right? So infrastructure, that's a key item on it, right? Another one is the density, because some of these parks were built so many years ago, you can't put modern homes on them. So as the people ultimately die or the home burns down, you can't put a home back on the lot. In some cases, you have to take like 2 or 3 lots and combine them together to get a home on there. So that's a super important diligence item. Your permit is super important. You got to make sure you have the right to be there. You know, you'd be shocked how many parks over the years we found where the park is illegal and shouldn't even be there. So they're running for 50 years illegally. So you got to make sure your permits are good. You got to do an environmental inspection. Somewhere between 1 out of every 10 and 1 out of every 100 mobile home parks fail an environmental inspection. You got to do that during your due diligence. You want to do a test ad to see if the phone rings and make sure people want to live there. You want to do diligence on the location. You want to talk to the chamber. You want to look at all the stats. There's a lot of things that go into doing them properly. But the good news is if you follow all the science of that, it normally works out pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And you know, like you said, you have to make sure that there's demand. And in today's age, with the way affordable housing is going, I'm sure as long as the location is right, the facility looks good, there's a ton of demand that's going into these parks. So Let's go ahead and bring in a few of these questions that are coming in.
I'm going to bring Tasha up, Frank. This is right for you. So she said, so you are saying you need at least $10,000 to start. Is that what you're saying, Frank?
No. Well, in other words, when it comes to buying parks, there's things you can do with parks that don't require capital. Things you can do with parks is you can tie deals up and sell assignments of contracts. People have been doing that forever. So what you do is you tie up a deal and or assigns contract, and then you sell an assignment of that contract. That doesn't cost anything. You can do a master lease with option. That's where you lease the property and you operate it. And then you have the right to buy it at the end. So if it goes up in value, you can again flip it before you technically own it. But so in other words, there are things you can do. Now, the less money you have going in, the harder it is to find something. So a lot of times what people do is they'll get a capital partner on the front end, because with the capital partner, they can look at a lot larger deals, a lot more deals. But don't be constrained. Don't say, oh, I can't get in the park business because I have no money. No, you still can get in the park business if you have no money. But it's going to be a lot harder to obviously buy the larger parks and non-turnaround parks, because those things typically are sold on the basis of you have to go out and get bank loans at 20% down.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's a people business. It's not even just helping the mobile home park owners that you're buying from, but also connecting with other people, partnering with them, getting capital that way, especially if you're just getting started. You can make a way if you just are more open to collaborating with other people. And that's what we always preach here as well.
Yep.
So Margaret wants to know, where are you finding these deals?
Okay. Well, our footprint, our territory we cover is called the Great Plains in the Midwest. So we do Texas straight up to Canada, and then we do the middle of America up. So those are the states that we're in. But you can buy parks and do well with them all over the U.S. It's mostly based on, again, where you live, right? So most park buyers are drivers. They're not really flyers. So we have almost no parks I can't drive to within 10 hours. And you might say, well, gosh, that's a long drive. 10 hours to me is like the average American driving to McDonald's. It doesn't faze me in the least. But that's how our territory has been over the years. We've been Great Plains and Midwest, but there's stuff in every state.
Hey, Frank, before I go to the next question, you mentioned 10 hours. I've heard that you work
Right.
7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Are you still doing that, Frank?
Well, let me give you the craziest stat. In 2019, I drove 100,000 miles in 1 year.
Oh.
Do the math on that. I drove so many miles that every time I pulled into my small town, I'd do an oil change. There's an oil change a week.
Oh my God. Well, you need a Tesla nowadays. I mean, the gas prices are crazy. So
Tesla would never work. I'd blow that battery out in no time.
Cool. And then I want your feedback on this, Frank. Matt says, I don't want to buy a mobile home park. I just don't want to do that. I would just want to flip mobile homes. I seen a beautiful 1994 mobile home for $13,500 or best offer. I tried to call when I seen it, and it was sold the same day. So he just wants to focus on doing deals in parks because it's so quick. What would you say to him right now, Frank?
There's nothing wrong with that. I'd say a very large number of park owners started out doing just homes. So there's certainly nothing wrong with that. The demand for the business is not just for the lots, it's for the homes, right? So if you can find homes cheap, rehab and flip, nothing wrong with that. I mean, even park owners do that. We have over the years brought in, I think, 2,000 homes into our parks and flipped them. So there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Awesome. And next question is Annette. She just wants to know, Frank, do you have a book or a website someone can come and look you up at?
Yeah, everything I write is at one website called mobilehomeuniversity.com, also just mhu.com. And everything I do, you can find there. I have so much content on there. It's crazy.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. And one of the last questions we have is, can you repeat the utility sources you should have versus private utilities?
Yeah, what you want is municipal water, municipal sewer, and then you want directly billed electricity and directly billed gas, right? The big ones, the ones that you don't want to buy. You don't want to buy. There's a sewer system variety called Lagoon. You don't want a lagoon. It's a cesspool. They're illegal in most states today. Packaging plants, the problem is they're very expensive, $500,000 to $1 million if they break. It's way too much, right? So typically on sewer, you want city sewer or septic, or you want a packaging plant that's in great condition. Water, you want city water, but you can survive well water. But the real turnoffs is when you are your own power or your own gas company, because then you have so much liability. It's not even funny. And for some reason, back in the 1950s and early 60s, park owners liked to build parks with what was called master metered power. And that meant the power was live on every lot 24 hours a day. And that was back then, I guess, because power was cheap. Park owners thought it gave them the advantage because a customer could pull in a mobile home and plug it in the same day. But just to get that one little advantage of like 4 or 5 days, they forever condemned themselves to being a power company.
Mhm.
And the same with the gas. I don't want to be a power company or a gas company. I mean, if the gas line blows up, I don't want to be the guy that made it blow up. So that's why we really don't like those.
Perfect. And I like this last question here. You said once that there's only 10 mobile home parks a year going up. There's only 44,000 mobile home parks. So this question is perfect. Is this business still working today, or is it oversaturated in this market?
Well, it's really not oversaturated, because you look at self-storage, for example, a third of all of self-storage is owned by only 6 people. So our industry is enormously fragmented. The problem you have is, out of those 40,000 mom and pop owned parks, there's only some subset of those that are worth owning. So you probably have to guess probably a third of those are junk. So it is a limited supply, but not that many people get in the industry because of all that negative stigma it has. So, I mean, how many people do you meet who you say, so what are you doing for alternative investing? I'm doing mobile home parks. The answer is none. Like, you go to a cocktail party. I mean, if you're doing single family home, everybody. If you went to a cocktail party, who here dabbles in single family home? Every single person would raise their hand. They either say, yeah, I do. I buy and flip, I wholesale, I whatever. But like, you never meet people who are park owners, ever. Never do you meet them in social situations. You don't meet them at your church. You don't meet them in anything. They don't exist. And that's why we're not oversaturated. Most people they won't do it because the average person thinks mobile home parks are gross. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's the stigma.
Yeah, I think we got one more from Matt.
Oh, one more question. Sorry,
Sure.
Frank. We're going to give one more. So Matt says, there's a lot of mobile homes around my county. There's a lot of opportunities to flip mobile homes in my area. I find mobile homes that are repossessed distressed people.
Yeah. Basically, Frank said, keep doing what you're doing. If it's working, if things are clicking, keep moving forward. The biggest thing with this is there are some people looking for areas to expand. And I think Frank is saying, like, hey, there's an opportunity here. You don't just have to go straight towards single family homes or even to apartments. There's still a lot of room in this industry to grow.
Yeah,
that's correct. The skills you have in doing mobile homes individually are the same skills you use with the parks. You still have to bond with people to buy it. It's just the same thing. It's just taking it up one notch and one scale. I mean, all a mobile home park is a parking lot. That's why it's called park. It's just a parking lot. It's not like a scenic park. And so when it's just a parking lot, if you understand how the homes work, well, you're in a better position to fill the spaces in your parking lot, right? That's how it works.
Yeah. You guys are in the land business. Yeah. That's really what it is.
That's exactly correct. We're just in the parking lot business.
In the parking lot business, right.
Man, I thought this was great, and so much information here. Yes. So many gems. I appreciate you coming, Frank. And Samera, Can you pull up again how they can get in contact with Frank? I believe that was mhu.com, right?
Yep, you got it right there. mhu.com. That is perfect. Yep, that's it.
Awesome, Frank. Well, we appreciate all the information.
Sure.
Be sure to check out his website, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it to someone that's getting started in their real estate business. I'm sure they're going to get a lot of information from it. All right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you later.
Goodbye.